My name is Carlos Sanchez. I'm editor of the Monitor newspaper. We are doing a special Monitor Live edition in anticipation of a momentous event that is expected to occur in about 1 hour. In about an hour, President Donald Trump is expected to be visiting the Department of Homeland Security when he is expected to announce that he signed an executive order ordering the construction of a wall between the U.S.-Mexico border. Joining me today to evaluate the implications of this executive order are Congressman Vicente Gonzalez, Democrat from the 15th Congressional District, and Congressman Henry Cuellar, Democrat from the 28th Congressional District. I'd like to basically begin the conversation by throwing it to you, Congressman Cuellar, to give me a sense of what you're understanding about what may happen in the next hour when President Trump announces the executive decision.
Well, first of all, President Trump cannot order a wall. This is something that Congress will have to do, and I assume that our Republican friends are going to go with them on building this wall, but he cannot order it. I want to make sure everybody understands that this is something that Congress has to fund, and this is something that we got to deal with when it comes up before us. There will be things that I think I'm going to agree with. Stopping the catch and release is something I agree with. Prioritizing criminal aliens, something that some of us have been talking about for a long time. Making sure that those countries that are not accepting their criminal aliens, making sure that there's a way that we can stop visas, so there's a lot of things that I think we're going to agree with them. But on that physical wall, that is a we're facing a 21st century problem with a 14th century solution called the wall. There's a lot about to talk about. There's the wall. There is NAFTA, and we got to understand what these actions will mean when Trump takes a very simplistic position. But he, quote again, he cannot order the wall. This is something that Congress will have to do, something that my friend Vicente and myself will have to deal with.
Congressman Gonzalez, what is your reaction to what is the pending action that is expected in the next hour?
Of course, I'm obviously very disappointed with the idea of a wall as a barrier between us and Mexico, mostly because it's just not effective. And I think there are more effective ways of protecting our border, such as aerostats, cameras, sensors, more boots on the ground. One thing that I've been talking about, in fact, me and Congressman Cuellar have had a conversation of, is why are we not engaging the government of Mexico to try to secure the southern border of Mexico, where a lot of our problems are coming from. And I think that's a new conversation that needs to be taking place. And I think it has a very important part in the conversation that's going on right now. But I don't seem to hear a lot about it. And that's something that we've been talking amongst ourselves. And I think we need to start engaging both the administration and folks on the other side of the aisle.
Congressman Cuellar, you said that this takes congressional action, but I'm wondering if he can circumvent Congress by simply using the law that was put in place under the George W. Bush administration.
Well, he can talk about that Secure Act. That is correct, but he cannot fund it. The president doesn't have the money to fund this, unless if he's going to take money away from the appropriations and the Homeland Security. So he doesn't have the money. Eventually, it's got to come through Congress. And again, I've talked to some of my Republicans friends, and it's either going to come in through a defense appropriations, or it's going to come in through a Homeland, which I happen to sit on both of those subcommittee and appropriations. It's got to come through us one way or the other. So he can look at the Defense Act that was done under Governor or President Bush, but the funding has to come through us. He's not a king. He's a president, and I think people need to start treating him as a president and not as a king. And again, Vicente and I, Filemon Vela, we are what I call law and order Democrats. We don't want to see open borders. We don't want to let the border. We just want to make sure that we secure the border well. And keep in mind, we spend over $18 billion on border security every year. And that's playing defense on the 1 yard line called the U.S.-Mexico border. When President Peña Nieto comes in, he needs to remind the United States or Trump that it's not only NAFTA or the wall, but think about this. Let's say Mexico doesn't have the visa system that they have right now that is very beneficial to the United States. They start opening up visas to countries that are not very friendly to the United States. That will hurt us. You can put a wall. It's not going to stop terrorists. It's not going to stop the terrorists. Look at what happened in 9/11. They didn't come in through Mexico. They came in through our friends in the north. Number one, look at how many people Mexico has stopped from coming into the United States and from Guatemala, that is in the southern border. The last time I saw Secretary of the Homeland Kelly was at the southern border. We were in Mexico at the border of Mexico and Guatemala. So we got to be smart. You know, we're not just saying no to Trump. We're law and order Democrats, but we want to make sure that we do this correctly. And this is where Vicente and Philemon and myself are all on the same page.
Congressman Gonzalez, this morning the New York Times had a story that talks about a debate that is emanating from Mexico in which they're considering simply walking away from NAFTA if Trump is interested in renegotiating. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, what is the symbolism with regard to Trump's actions or expected actions later today? And how do you think that will affect U.S.-Mexico relations?
Right. Well, the symbolism is certainly very undiplomatic, but what I'm even more concerned about is the economics of how it will affect our region and the rest of the country. Obviously, Mexico is Texas' largest trading partner. We've produced thousands of jobs in our region, and it's brought billions of dollars in trade. Another thing that I always like to remind folks is that for every dollar imported from Mexico, we get 40 cents back in investment in content. And for example, if you compare that to China, we get 4 cents back. So this is, it's a great deal. Is there something that might be able to get improved? Of course there is. We're always looking to improve every agreement and every bill and everything that we do up here. But to just abolish it would be devastating for the country and certainly for our state and our region.
Congressman Cuellar, when the wall was originally built under the Bush administration, you successfully avoided having any remnants of that wall in your district. Do you anticipate being able to pull off something under the Trump administration?
Well, we certainly, in my congressional district, I don't want to see a wall, but I also want to be supportive of my friend Vicente and the other folks. We want to see more border patrol. We want to see more technology, aerostats, sensors, other ways of doing this. There's smarter ways of doing this. We want to engage Mexico to do more to secure their border and our border. So there's a lot of ways that we can do this. The bottom line is we're in all this together. We can't be divided. And this is what Trump is doing very well. As an example, Canada just said, the Canadian ambassador said, oh, we're not the target. It's Mexico and China. So we can work a bilateral agreement with the United States. We got to make sure that whether we're countries, individual members of Congress, we're all together, and we cannot let Trump do his way of dividing people or countries. And that's what he's trying to do. So we're all sticking together and make sure that we do the right thing. So we're law and order Democrats, but we're not going to spend billions of dollars on a wall that's not going to be very successful. As an example, let's be smart about this. You put the biggest wall. Did you know that 40% of the 11 to 12 million undocumented persons that we have here came through a legal way, a visa, and they just overstayed the time? So you can put the biggest wall that you want to, and it's not going to stop those people. Or look at the new people coming in, the Cubans, and I know there's been a change in that, and President Obama did well by changing that. But look at other people. They'll come in and claim asylum, refugee status, credible fear. So a wall is not going to stop them. So we, as the border congressmen, we are law and order, but we're not going to be spending crazy money like some of us feel that it's a feel-good solution. We want to be smart on how we secure the border.
Congressman Gonzalez, one of his early political victories involving, at that time, President-elect Trump, involved carrier staying in Indiana. Shortly after that occurred, a Mexican governor, I think it was in Nuevo León, called for a boycott of economic activity in both McAllen and South Padre Island. So I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little bit about your concerns regarding the economic impact that a wall would have.
Well, it certainly sends the wrong message to our neighbors. And, I wasn't very pleased. In fact, we put a letter together for the governor for that statement he made, because we've been friends, we've been allies, we've been trading partners. We have family in the state of Nuevo León. Many of us do. I know I do, for example. And I've done trade with Mexico prior to being a lawyer and prior to being in Congress. So we've had a long history of a good relationship, and I think we need to continue a dialogue, a healthy, smart dialogue that benefits both sides of the border and benefits the economy and benefits our region. And when I say region, I mean not only Texas, but also northern Mexico, which is a strong participant in our trade.
Congressman Cuellar, you had mentioned this in a couple of times, and it is the notion that perhaps a wall may not be appropriate, but a virtual wall might be appropriate. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, when you look at aerostats, sensors, cameras that have worked very well, except we need to use more and more personnel, we can do that. In fact, just yesterday, I spent time with the company. I think both you and your wife were asking me for the name of it. So they came in and talked to me, and they're telling me that there's 27 aerostats that are waiting to be used. They're military surplus that we can use right away. In fact, 6 of them, the original 6 that we were going to be using, are in a warehouse that Homeland Security is paying rent on keeping those in storage. But in total, 27 aerostats that we can use immediately and provide a virtual wall to provide that. That is good for us on the border. And it's also good for the Mexicanos, because you turn the camera over to the Mexican side, and that will let us know of threats that are coming into the United States before they come in. It's worked very well for the military. In fact, years ago, when I was with Chairman McCall and I, we were in Afghanistan, and I said, why can't we use that aerostats and use them over here? So there's 27 that are waiting to be used. We're paying storage costs. We're wasting taxpayers' money when they ought to be put here, and it will be a lot cheaper than a wall. A wall, depending if you have single or double layers or triple layers, but a single layer will cost about $6.5 million per mile. 1 mile of technology will cost about $1 million. So are we going to be smart about how we secure the border, or are we going to rush and use a 14th century solution called a wall?
Okay. And finally, a question to both congressmen, but I'll start with you, Congressman Gonzalez. We are now 5 days into the Trump administration. Can you give me an assessment of these 5 days and what your thoughts have been about the early movements by President Trump?
Well, obviously we're always optimistic and hoping to find common ground and hopefully being able to reach across the aisle to get things done for the country. But, he seems to have been coming through with a lot of the rhetoric that we heard during his campaign. And we need to resist what we don't agree with and try to talk to our friends across the aisle who also, I think, see things the way we do. I mean, it's not, the uncertainty is not just for us, it's for everyone. And, I'm going to be cautiously optimistic, and I hope that, President Trump comes to the border and really takes a good tour and look and analyzes and gets to hear some of these opinions, especially what we're talking about, what Congressman Cuellar just mentioned, aerostats and technology, and just more intelligent ways of securing our border than building a ancient idea of a wall.
Congressman Cuellar, your impressions of the first 5 days of the Trump administration?
Well, again, I'm with my friend Vicente in the sense that we want to give the benefit of the doubt to the president. Any incoming president we will give him the benefit of the doubt. But he has already started attacking the healthcare. And it's interesting because in many ways that healthcare, now he's talking about keeping the healthcare law and making some changes. Some of us have been talking about that for years on how you address healthcare. He's talking about attacking the border and not only the wall, but he's also talking about NAFTA. And you know, on NAFTA, it's going to be very simple. Mexico can walk away from NAFTA and we still have WTO. The WTO will give us what we need as friends with Mexico. So trade is going to be important. NAFTA is better, but there's still the backfall of WTO that will be good. And so that's one thing. And keep in mind, President Nieto needs to tell Trump that the #1 export market for American goods is Canada. The #2 is Mexico. So everything we export, Mexico is our #2 market. In 5 years, if things don't change, Mexico will surpass Canada. So we got to keep that in mind because there's millions of jobs in the U.S. because of the trade we have with Mexico. The last thing is very simple. He's doing some things that we have to keep an eye on. Remember when he said that he could have won the popular vote, which he lost by 3 million votes, period. He lost it, 3 million votes, period. But now he's saying that he wants to do a major, quote, major investigation and change the law. First of all, there's no evidence that there were 3 million illegal votes, #1. #2, notice what he said. We will investigate and come up with laws. Does that mean that he wants to have a national voter ID like they done in Texas? Does that mean that he's going to make it harder for minorities and other folks to come? I ask you to look at what he said today, quote, major investigation on this voter fraud, and we're going to have some changes in the law. I would have to say that we have to keep an eye on that, because imagine if they do what the Republicans have done here in Texas against minorities and Democrats and make it hard for people to vote, and they do that across the nation. There is a plan, in my opinion, that they're going to try to follow, and we have to be very, very careful about what he meant by a major investigation and laws to come after that.
And on that note, I'd like to conclude this edition of Monitor Live. Congressman Henry Cuellar, Congressman Vicente Gonzalez, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.